A simple text, but it carried years of resentment and finality. I was standing in line at the post office, holding a manila envelope with birthday cards I hadn't sent yet. I checked my phone because something buzzed, thinking it might be spam or a shipping update. It wasn't. It was him. My son. Just a text. No hi. No punctuation. Just, "We're building a new life without you." That was it. 11 words. 11 words that folded me inward like wet cardboard. I reread it twice before I realized I'd stopped breathing. People behind me were shifting. Someone asked if I was moving forward. I wasn't. Not in that moment. Not anymore. I left the line and sat in my car with the envelope still in my hand. His card was inside. The kind with a dumb cartoon and a dad joke. I'd even written, "Hope we can talk soon," but now I knew. That conversation wasn't coming. That text wasn't an accident or a cry for help. It was a decision. Final. Calculated. Years of being pushed to the edges of his life had built up to this one digital guillotine drop. My brain started spiraling. Was it his mom? Was it him? Was it something I said? Something I didn't say? Every birthday missed. Every weekend rescheduled. Every Father's Day call that never came. They all led here. I thought I still had time to fix it. I was wrong. I opened the glove box and put the envelope inside, next to the sunglasses he left years ago. Still scratched. Still his. I didn't drive home right away. I just sat there, staring at the text. Watching the sun bake my windshield into a dull haze. Watching the battery drain. Watching the little dots that never came. "We're building a new life without you." He meant it. Every word hit like a knife. Not shouted. Not tearfully spoken during a fight. Just typed. Cold. Direct. It wasn't a conversation. It was a verdict. I kept thinking maybe it wasn't him. Maybe his mom wrote it. Maybe he dropped his phone. Maybe it was a joke. Some cruel autocorrect. But deep down, I knew better. He was always quiet like me. When he said things, he meant them. He meant this. I thought about the time we built a treehouse together. He was 9. It leaned to the left and we called it the Tilted Tower. We sat up there with peanut butter sandwiches and talked about space. He said he'd take me to Mars someday. That was before she filed the paperwork. Before my weekend visits became court appointments. Before she bought him a dog and stopped answering my messages. It was always a slow erosion. I just didn't see the cliff until I'd already stepped off it. I used to rehearse what I'd say if he ever told me he hated me. I never thought I'd need to rehearse for indifference. I tried to reply. Typed, "I love you anyway," but I deleted it. Typed, "If that's what you need, I understand." Deleted that too. I thought of sending a photo of us at the lake, the one where he's on my shoulders and I'm sunburnt and smiling. But I didn't. I did nothing. Because doing something would mean I still had a role to play. And I didn't. I was officially recast. Rewritten out of the script. I always thought fathers were supposed to be permanent. Turns out I was just a chapter he'd already finished. He was building something new. And I was the debris. I ran beside his bike, heart pounding. He laughed. Once. That laugh stuck in my ribs like a beam. He wobbled, panicked, and then the handlebars steadied, just for a second. He looked back and realized I wasn't holding on anymore. His face twisted surprise, then joy, then fear. Then he fell, knees scraped, elbows dusty. I reached him before he cried. He didn't want to cry in front of me. He was 5. His helmet was too big and his shoes were untied. I told him he did great. That falling was part of it. That the real trick wasn't staying up, it was getting back on. He nodded like he believed me. Maybe he did. That afternoon he asked if we could try again, and again, and again. Until it was dark. Until the streetlights buzzed to life and the mosquitoes got brave. I didn't care. I would have run beside that bike forever if he asked. That was the last time I remember him needing me without shame. He grew up. The bike got bigger. Then it was a skateboard. Then it was a car I helped him pay for. And then it was nothing. The chain of things we shared rusted and snapped. I tried to reconnect by pretending I still understood the gears. He'd mumble a thanks, barely look up. I missed the days when he looked at me like I held gravity. Like I could keep him balanced by just being close. I couldn't remember the last time he told me about something first. Everything became after the fact. Or not at all. The silence got heavier than the bike ever was. But that one moment still lives under my ribs. His laugh echoing on pavement. His legs pedaling hard into the wind. His eyes wide when he realized he was flying. For a second, we both believed he could go anywhere. He said he was at school. He wasn't. And it was the beginning of a pattern. I didn't catch it right away. Not until weeks later, when a truancy notice came in the mail. I called his mom. She said she thought I knew. I didn't. I asked him gently. Sat on the porch with a soda between us. He wouldn't look at me. Said the teacher was boring. Said he didn't feel like going. That it was no big deal. But it was. Not because he skipped, but because he lied. It was small, sure, but it cracked something. A quiet fracture. The first, in a long line. I asked him to tell me next time. He nodded. Said okay, but his voice was somewhere else. Distant. Detached. He used to tell me everything. How he liked the weird kid who drew anime in class. How he wanted to build a robot for the science fair. He'd ramble until I had to pause the TV just to keep up. That kid faded. Got replaced by someone who spoke in shrugs. I blamed the school. I blamed the internet. I blamed the divorce. I blamed everything except the truth. He was slipping, and I wasn't fast enough to catch him. He started lying about small things. Homework. Sleepovers. Where he got the money for that hoodie. I wanted to trust him. I really did. But every answer felt like a half wall. I couldn't see over it. Couldn't climb it. And the more I tried, the more he shut the gate. He was building a world without me. Brick by brick. Lie by lie. And I kept pretending it was just a phase. Something he'd grow out of. Something we'd laugh about someday. But deep down I knew. You don't lose a child all at once. You lose them in inches. And this was inch one. Charming. Polite. And cold beneath the surface. She knew how to light up a room. How to tilt her head just enough when laughing to seem genuine. But I saw it early. The way she studied people before responding. The delay between emotion and performance. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just nerves, or maybe I was being unfair. I wanted to like her. I wanted to believe she was good for him. My son adored her. He'd light up around her, like someone who'd finally been chosen. That mattered to me. So I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Again. And again. Until I couldn't anymore. It was the little things. The way her compliments came with barbs. He gets his stubbornness from you, huh? Followed by that saccharine laugh. Or how she insisted on telling his stories for him. Always correcting the details, like she owned the narrative. She'd squeeze his hand when he tried to speak. Just slightly. Like a leash no one else could see. I noticed he stopped speaking freely around her. Started checking her eyes before answering simple questions. You still writing music? I'd ask. He'd glance at her, then shrug. Not really. But I knew he was. I found his notebook once, pages filled with lyrics he'd never share. I remember telling her once, in passing, that I thought he was special, that he had a good heart. She smiled, wide and toothy, and said, "He's lucky to have someone who still sees that." That sentence kept me up for weeks. She knew what she was doing. She was rewriting him. Slowly, subtly, until the boy I knew had to get approval to be himself. And he gave it willingly, because when someone loves you like that conditional, you start confusing it for safety. I hated her smile. Not because it was fake, but because it was effective. I heard the way she spoke to him when she thought I couldn't hear. Soft words laced with contempt, like poison in tea. I stayed late once, dropping off something he'd left behind. She didn't know I was still on the porch. Their voices came through the cracked kitchen window. "You think you're special, just because your dad says so?" she snapped. Silence. Then her voice again, quieter this time. Maybe he's just trying to make up for how pathetic you are. I didn't move. I couldn't. My hands clenched around the steering wheel. I wanted to storm in, to say something, anything, but I didn't. I justified it, told myself maybe I heard wrong, maybe it was a joke, but I knew. The words hit too surgically. She knew where to cut, and he took it, absorbed it like rain on dry soil. When he came to the door to say goodbye, he looked tired, like something in him was always bracing. I asked if he was okay. He said yeah, always yeah. That became his answer to everything. I noticed bruises not on his skin, but in his spirit. The way he avoided eye contact, the way he apologized before speaking. I tried bringing it up once. He got defensive, said I was imagining things, said she loved him, said I didn't know what I was talking about, and maybe I didn't. But I knew what it felt like to shrink for someone else's comfort. I knew the sound of a voice that wears you down grain by grain. And I knew she had him convinced it was normal. That love was supposed to feel like walking on broken glass barefoot. I started watching her more after that. The way she corrected his stories in public. The way she laughed at his opinions, like they were naive. Everyone else thought they were perfect together. But they didn't hear the kitchen windows. Didn't feel the silence after the door closed. Didn't notice how my son, once full of fire, now moved like someone who expected to be burned. They made me look like a stranger to my own son. A manila folder full of printouts and emails, misquotes, misunderstandings, texts pulled out of context. She had a binder, tabs, labels, highlighters. I had memories. I had mornings making pancakes, nights reading Calvin and Hobbes until he fell asleep with the flashlight still on. But those didn't count. Not in court. Not under oath. The judge asked if I'd missed any birthdays. I had. One. The year I was in the hospital. That was enough. She tilted her head and called me unstable. Her lawyer nodded like it was a fact. They didn't mention the time I worked 2 jobs to keep the roof over our heads. Or how I drove through 2 states to make his recital, standing in the back because all the seats were gone. They didn't ask about the first time he called me dad after learning to talk. They asked about money, about missed appointments, about boundaries. She said I lacked structure. I said I brought him laughter. They said I was inconsistent. She said she was scared. And that was it. Fear wins. Love doesn't stand a chance when fear walks into a courtroom dressed in restraint. The judge looked at me like I was a risk, not a father. He glanced at the report, then at me, and decided the report knew me better. My son sat 2 rows back, fiddling with the zipper on his hoodie. He didn't look up. When they ruled against me, I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just folded my hands and tried to breathe. I wanted to yell, to beg. But all I could think about was how easy it is to lose a child without them dying. How simple it is to be erased, to become an occasional weekend, a name on an envelope, a stranger with the wrong version of the story. Every visit felt more like an intrusion. The schedule said Saturdays at 10. The clock said 10:03. She texted, "We're running late." Again. When they finally pulled up, he barely looked out the window. I waved. He didn't wave back. She didn't unbuckle. Just gave me a nod and handed him off like a coat. He slumped into the passenger seat, earbuds already in. We didn't talk. Not really. I'd ask about school. He'd say, "Fine." I'd ask about music. He'd shrug. I took him to lunch, once his favorite place. He picked at fries and stared at his phone. Said he wasn't hungry. I told him I missed him. He said nothing. I watched him watch the door, like he couldn't wait to go back. The court said I had rights. But rights don't mean connection, they mean hours. Supervised holidays. Birthday parties that feel like interviews. I once bought him a jacket I thought he'd love. He left it in the back seat. Said it wasn't his style. She told him not to take anything home unless it was approved. I wasn't part of the plan. I was a detour. A pause. A break in whatever life they were building without me. Sometimes, I wondered if he was even allowed to enjoy being with me, if smiling was betrayal, if laughing too hard might be used against him later. We went to a movie once. He laughed at something, then looked down like he regretted it. That crushed me more than silence ever could. I started to dread the visits too, not because I didn't want to see him, but because every time I did, I felt him slipping further. I was no longer his safe place. I was his schedule, and every minute we spent together felt like proof that I was losing. Not because I didn't love him, but because love wasn't enough. Not when someone else was narrating the story of who I was, and he was listening. He stopped hugging me back. At first, it was subtle. A shift in weight, less pressure in the arms. The kind of thing you'd only notice if you'd memorized how someone holds you. I had. He used to grip tightly, like he needed it. Like he believed the time apart could be paused with an embrace. Then one weekend, his arms just rested at his sides. Mine wrapped around him. His shoulders didn't even flinch. I pulled back slowly, pretending not to notice. But I did. I noticed everything. The way he stayed, seated in the car until I got out first. The way he avoided eye contact when I said, "I love you." The way he walked back to her car, like it was a finish line. The drop-offs became countdowns. 10 minutes left. 5. 2. We'd sit on the couch, and I'd ask about school. He'd say same. I'd offer to cook. He'd shrug. He always said thank you. Always polite. But polite is distance dressed in manners. I started timing the moment he disengaged. It got earlier, every time. Once it was after dinner. Then before. Eventually, it was the second he walked in. She'd text to say she was outside. He'd shoot up like he was on fire. No goodbye. Just, see ya. I'd stand in the doorway and watch him head down the steps without looking back. I stopped reaching out first, not out of spite, but because rejection started tasting too familiar. I couldn't take another weekend where I felt like a substitute teacher in my own life. I remember once he forgot something, left his phone charger in the guest room. I ran out to the car, holding it up. He didn't roll down the window. She did. She took it with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Thanks," she said. He stared straight ahead. I walked back inside, holding my breath, hoping I'd forget how that felt. I didn't. Present in body, absent in soul. He'd sit across the table, fork in hand, plate untouched. I'd tell a story. Something light. Something funny from work. He'd nod. But his eyes, those were somewhere else. Not bored. Not tired. Just gone. Like looking into a house with the lights off. I tried games, tried walks, tried silence. None of it reached him. He'd answer questions, offer quick replies, but nothing lingered. No curiosity, no follow-up. I told myself it was just teenage years, that maybe it was hormones or distraction, but I knew. This was different. This was erosion. The slow fade of connection, like a photo left in the sun too long. I caught him once scrolling on his phone mid-sentence. Not rude, just indifferent. I asked what he was reading. He said, "Nothing." And that was the most honest thing he'd said in weeks. I'd call his name. He'd look, but only halfway. Like he was checking to see if I was still talking. His body sat in the room. His mind was elsewhere. I started missing him while he was still in front of me. That's the cruelest kind of absence, the one you feel in real time. I kept looking for glimpses. A laugh, a smile, a spark. Just one flicker of the boy who used to run to me at the airport, arms wide, voice cracking from excitement. Now he just waited for his ride like it was overdue. I wondered if he even knew he was drifting, or if he thought this version of himself was just the upgrade. Cooler, tougher, unattached. I wanted to ask him where he'd gone, what he was thinking, what he needed, but I didn't. I was afraid the answer would be nothing, or worse, no longer you. So I stayed quiet. Let the silence do the talking. It said more than he ever did. And the worst part was, I listened. She told him I left. I didn't. But the story stuck anyway. It's easier to hold on to a clean version than the messy middle. She told him I walked out, that I gave up, that I didn't fight hard enough. And he believed her. Or maybe he didn't. Maybe it was just easier to pretend. I tried to correct it. Gently at first. You know I didn't leave like that, right? He shrugged. That's not what Mom said. And there it was. The brick wall. Solid. Final. She'd rewritten our history while I was still trying to survive it. Edited me out like a typo. The version he knows is a shadow. One that abandoned him, one that couldn't handle responsibility. She never told him about the nights I slept on the couch so he could have the only bed in the apartment. Or the second job I took to pay for his summer camp. Or the way I showed up to court with documents and timelines and no lawyer because I couldn't afford one. None of that made the cut. She painted herself the hero. The stable one. The constant. All while I became the reason. The cause. The excuse for why things fell apart. I remember once, he asked why I didn't come to his school play. I did. I was in the back row. She told him I wasn't coming. Told the teacher not to mention me. Told the photographer to crop tight. I waved at him during the curtain call. He didn't wave back. He hadn't been looking. She taught him how to look away. Every story has a villain. In hers, it was me. And he bought it. Because when you're a kid, you believe the voice that tucks you in. Not the one that calls from far away. I wanted to scream the truth. To show him receipts and court orders and timestamps. But truth doesn't matter in the story you weren't invited to write. And by the time I was allowed back in, my chapter was already closed. He drove my truck. Sat at my table. Called my son, Buddy. I saw the photos first. Facebook. A fishing trip. My son holding a rod. Her new man standing behind him, smiling like he belonged there. My truck, in the background, same dent, in the bumper I never fixed. I stared at the screen for hours. Zooming in, looking for signs of hesitation on my son's face. There were none. He looked happy, relaxed, like this was normal, like this was his new world. And maybe it was. I remember the day I gave her the keys. Told her to use the truck until she figured out a new ride. Told her to call me if anything came up. She never did. Just passed the keys to him, like they were hers to give. I imagined him adjusting my seat, changing my presets, reaching into the glove box and finding the photo of my son tucked behind the registration. I wondered if he threw it away or just pretended it wasn't there. My son told me once, casually, Jeff's teaching me how to drive. Jeff. That was his name. Like we were friends. Like we had history. I nodded. Tried to smile. Tried to say, that's great, without sounding gutted. Every part of me wanted to scream. I taught you how to ride a bike. I showed you how to tie a tie. I stayed up with you through fevers and night terrors. And now this Manthus placeholder gets to teach you how to drive? Gets to clap when you merge without swerving? Gets to be the one in the passenger seat while I watch from the curb? It's not about jealousy. It's about erasure. About watching someone step into a space you bled for and claim it without earning it. I wanted to hate him. But how do you hate someone your son calls buddy? I still remember when my son used to call me that. Voice small. Hand in mine. Now it's just a title passed down like a secondhand sweater. And it fits him better now than it does me. We planned campus tours. Then he ghosted me. It started with excitement. He sent me links to schools he liked. Some nearby, some across the country. We talked about dorms, majors, financial aid. I told him I'd help. Told him we could drive to a few, walk the campuses together, grab burgers after. He said yeah. Said he wanted that. Said maybe spring break. I marked it on the calendar. Circled the dates. Bought a guidebook. Even booked time off work. I was ready, but he never brought it up again. No follow-up. No. When are we going? Just silence. I texted. No reply. Called. Voicemail. Days passed. Then weeks. I thought maybe he was stressed. Maybe it was school. Finals. Senior stuff. So I waited, told myself not to overthink it. But something in my chest had already sunk. A dull weight. Familiar now. I sent one more message, just a quick. Still planning that road trip? Nothing. Seen. No response. I found out later he visited 3 campuses with her. She posted pictures. Him and her new man, standing in front of a university sign, smiling, like they were the dream team. Like I was never part of the plan. I wanted to be mad. But mostly, I just felt foolish. I'd kept the brochures. I'd highlighted pages. I'd imagined pointing out dorm windows and saying, "This is where you'll change everything." But he was already changing. Just not with me. I kept thinking about the moment we first talked about college. He was 13, lying on the floor with a laptop, watching videos about dorm tours. "Do you think I'll get in somewhere good?" he asked. I told him he already had what it takes. I meant it. He smiled. I saved that smile, filed it away, just like the brochures I never mailed, just like the plans we never made, just like the version of him that used to ask me for advice. That version is gone, and all I've got left are promises we never put in writing. He crossed the stage. I watched on Facebook. There he was, cap tilted slightly, gown too long, that same nervous smile he had when he lost his first tooth. My son, on a screen, in a stranger's video. I wasn't invited. No ticket. No mention. Just a, "Congrats to my amazing boy," post from her. 27 likes deep before I even saw it. I stared at the footage, thumb frozen above the pause button. He looked older, taller, his voice deeper when he said thank you to someone off camera. I rewound it. Again, looking for a sign, a glance to the crowd, a moment of hesitation. Anything that meant he noticed I wasn't there. But he didn't. Or if he did, he didn't show it. I wasn't part of his day. I wasn't even part of the footnote. I had bought him a suit months earlier, had it tailored, paid extra for the rush. I never saw him wear it. Didn't know if he even took it out of the garment bag. I told myself maybe he wore it in the senior portrait. I told myself anything to keep the hurt from swallowing me whole. Her post tagged him and her new man. Couldn't be prouder of the young man we raised. We. That word hung heavier than all the rest. We. Like I never existed. Like I hadn't been there from the start. I still have his kindergarten graduation program. Folded. Torn in one corner. His name circled. Back then, he ran to me after the ceremony, certificate flapping in the wind, yelling, "Did you see me?" I had. I always did. This time, I wasn't even in the building. I sent him a message after. "Proud of you. Always." He didn't reply. Just reacted with a heart. The kind that takes 1 second to tap, and even less to mean. I watched that video again before bed. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to. Proof he'd made it. Proof he'd grown. Proof that even if I wasn't invited, I was still watching, still waiting, still his father. Even if he didn't look back. He said it like he rehearsed it. No hesitation. No anger. Just fact. Like he was reading from a script someone else helped him write. We were standing in the parking lot outside a diner. I had driven 2 hours just to hand-deliver a graduation gift. Not a big one. Just something I thought might matter. A watch. Classic. Simple. The kind I imagined him wearing to his first job interview, maybe someday on his wedding day. He opened the box, barely looked at it, then looked at me. "I don't need you anymore," that's all he said. Nothing before it. Nothing after. Just that. I didn't even know what to say. My mouth opened, then closed. I laughed. Stupid. Reflexive. "You don't mean that," I said. He didn't blink. "Yeah, I do." And that was it. No raised voices. No fight. Just a clean break. I watched him walk away, holding the box like it was empty. Maybe it was. I don't remember driving home. I just remember gripping the steering wheel so hard it left marks. I replayed it over and over. His face, his voice, the way he didn't flinch when he said it. I thought about the nights I stayed up with him when he was sick, the birthday parties I threw by myself, the nights I cried in the bathroom so he wouldn't hear, and still he didn't need me. It wasn't about money, or rides, or help. It was bigger. It was the quiet truth that I had become irrelevant, and he needed me to know it, maybe to feel powerful, maybe to set himself free, maybe just because someone told him to. I sat in the driveway for an hour before going inside. I didn't turn on the lights, just sat there, trying to feel something other than small, other than disposable. I told myself I still mattered, that he didn't mean it, that he was just angry, confused, young, but the words echoed too clearly, like they'd been said before, practiced, polished, prepared. And this time, they weren't said in heat. They were said in certainty. No number, no email, no trace. It didn't happen all at once. First, it was unanswered texts, then voicemails, then calls that rang once, then went dead. I thought maybe his phone broke. Maybe he was just busy. Maybe he'd reply when he could. I checked my email. Nothing. Messenger. Nothing. I texted again. Just want to make sure you're okay. Seen. No reply. The last message I sent was 3 words. Still love you. It didn't even say delivered. That's when I knew. Blocked. Not by accident. Not a glitch. A decision. A line drawn in permanent marker. I sat there staring at the empty screen, trying to remember the last time we spoke without tension, without edge. Maybe years. Maybe never. I opened old photos. Him on my shoulders. Him in Halloween costumes. Him asleep in the car seat, drooling on a Spider-Man blanket. All that access. All that history. Gone with a swipe. I tried to convince myself it was temporary. That he was figuring things out. That one day, I'd get a message out of the blue. Hey, or maybe something longer. I've been thinking. Can we talk? But days passed. Then weeks. Then months. Birthdays came and went. I sent a card. Never heard back. I kept his number saved, even though it didn't work anymore. Kept it the way you keep a house key for a door that's been bricked shut. Just in case. The silence grew roots. Became normal. Became something I learned to live around. Like a limp. Some nights I'd still draft messages, just to feel close to him. I never sent them. Just wrote and deleted. Like lighting a candle in a locked room. Eventually, I stopped checking the phone. Stopped staring at the inbox. But I never deleted his contact. I couldn't. Deleting it felt like accepting it. Like making the silence permanent. And some part of me, the part that still remembered how he sounded when he said, "Dad," wasn't ready to give that up. Not yet. Maybe never. Every paycheck. A little less for me. A little more for his future. It started before he could even walk. I set up the account after his first birthday. Automatic transfers. Small at first, $20, maybe $30 a week. Whatever I could manage. Back then, I was working nights. Loading trucks in the winter. Sweating through shirts in the summer. My hands were cracked. My back was wrecked. But I kept going. Because every shift meant one more step towards something better for him. I imagined the day he'd get the acceptance letter. Thought about how he'd smile, how he'd say, "We did it." I used to dream about that. More than I'd admit. Sometimes when things got hard, when the fridge was half empty, or the rent was overdue, I'd look at the account balance, just to remind myself it was worth it. That I was building something invisible, something solid. I skipped vacations, turned down raises that came with moves, said no to things I wanted, so he could say yes to everything he needed. He never asked me to. That was the point. He didn't have to. Being a parent isn't about being asked. It's about knowing. And I knew. I knew I wanted him to have options, to never feel trapped, to never have to choose survival over dreams. I pictured him walking through a campus with a backpack and coffee and big ideas. I pictured him calling me after his first exam. "I crushed it," he'd say. And I'd say, "Of course you did." For years, I protected that picture, guarded it like a treasure. Every dollar was a brick in the foundation, and I was proud of it. Not because of the number, but because of what it meant. It meant I showed up, even when I had nothing left, even when he pulled away, even when the calls stopped and the messages dried up. I still contributed, still believed, still held the door open. Until the day it was clear he wasn't coming through it. I didn't cry. I smiled. Just once. The woman at the bank asked me twice. "Are you sure?" she said, hovering over the keyboard. I nodded. "Yes," I said. "I'm sure." She gave me a strange look. Probably thought I was moving the money to another account, for another school, another kid. She didn't ask, just typed, clicked, printed something out. I signed it without reading. I didn't need to. I knew what I was doing. The account was 12 years old. That balance had survived recessions, layoffs, heartbreak. But it didn't survive him saying he didn't need me. It didn't survive the silence. It didn't survive being blocked. I withdrew the funds, took it all out in a cashier's check, folded it once, slipped it into my jacket, walked to my car like it was just another Tuesday. I sat behind the wheel for a long time, didn't turn the engine, just stared ahead. Then I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I felt something unfasten inside me, something that had been bolted shut for years. I didn't owe him this anymore. I had done my part, more than my part. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was done. And that came with its own kind of peace. I drove to the coast, parked where the cliffs open up to nothing, watched the water, listened to the wind. I thought about using the money on something big, a trip, a boat, a cabin, something loud, something final. But instead, I bought a coffee, sat with it, let it go cold, tasted every bitter sip, thought about how long I'd been waiting to be released from hope, and realized I'd finally given myself permission to stop waiting. Not revenge, not escape, just freedom. I didn't tell anyone. I just packed. A small suitcase, old and scuffed, with one broken wheel, 2 shirts, a pair of jeans, my watch, and a paperback I never finished. I booked the ticket online, clicked the cheapest destination that didn't need a return date, window seat, early morning, no layovers. I didn't need luxury. I needed distance. Needed something that wasn't familiar. The cashier's check was still folded in my coat pocket, pressed like a goodbye letter. At the airport, I didn't look back. Didn't take one last glance at the parking garage or the skyline or the spot where we used to get pancakes every Sunday. I just walked. Through security. Through the gate. Through the old life that never really wanted me in it. People might have seen me and thought I was running. But I wasn't. There's a difference between running away and walking toward something. I was walking toward space, toward silence, toward something that didn't have my name etched in disappointment. I didn't bring photos, didn't bring keepsakes, didn't bring old birthday cards with stick figure drawings and "Love you, Dad," scribbled in red crayon. I left those in a drawer I locked and didn't label. The plane took off, and I watched the clouds rise to meet me. I thought I'd cry. I didn't. I thought I'd feel guilty. I didn't. I thought maybe I'd panic, want to turn around. I didn't. I breathed, really breathed, like I hadn't in years, like my lungs finally had permission. Not because I didn't love him, but because I finally remembered I could love myself too. The seatbelt light dinged off. I ordered black coffee and stared out the window. There was no celebration, no epiphany, just calm. And that calm was louder than any apology I never got. This wasn't a protest. This wasn't a punishment. This was the softest, quietest kind of liberation. I bought a one-way ticket because I was ready to stop circling the same departure gate. And I knew deep in the marrow of me no one was coming to stop me. Somewhere warm, somewhere nameless, and quiet. I woke up before the sun. No alarm, just instinct. The curtains were thin, the kind that let the morning bleed in slow. I stepped out barefoot onto the balcony, floor still damp from ocean air. Somewhere below, a fisherman was dragging nets. A dog barked. Birds I couldn't name argued in the trees. It didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like a long exhale. I sat in a plastic chair, chipped on the armrest, and watched as the sky peeled itself open. Pinks, oranges, colors that had nothing to prove. I didn't take a photo, didn't reach for my phone. I let it be mine. Unshared, unposted, real. I hadn't felt that in a long time. I hadn't felt anything that wasn't filtered through guilt or memory or the ache of almost. I poured a cup of coffee instant. Bitter. Perfect. I didn't think about where he was. Didn't check if he'd unblocked me. Didn't wonder what she was telling him now. For the first time, their silence wasn't a wound. It was a wall. And on this side of it, I was safe. I watched the sun slip free from the horizon like it had somewhere to be. And maybe I did too. Or maybe I didn't. That was the thing. There were no plans. No court dates. No pickup times. No begging for answers that never came. Just the breeze and the birds, and this strange, unfamiliar feeling I think people call peace. I took a second cup, added nothing. Sat there until the heat hit my skin like a reminder. I was still here. Still breathing. Still allowed. Maybe I'd stay in this town. Maybe I'd move again. Maybe I'd learn to surf, or just walk the beach and collect things people left behind. I didn't know. And for the first time in a long time, not knowing didn't scare me. It thrilled me. The day unfolded slow. I didn't rush to meet it. I just let it come. One breeze, one bird call, 1 minute at a time. And for the first time since he looked me in the eyes and said he didn't need me, I finally believed I might be okay. I write him. Every month. No address. It started after the trip. After the sunrise and the silence and the space I carved out for myself, I bought a cheap notebook from a corner store. Spine already bent. Pages lined but crooked. I wrote his name on the first one, even though I knew he'd never see it. Then I wrote the first letter. Hey, it began. Like nothing had ever broken. Like there was still a bridge. I told him about the seagull that stole my sandwich. About the old man who sells mangoes out of a red bucket and hums 90s rock ballads like lullabies. I told him I was doing okay. I meant it. Mostly. Every month, a new letter. No return address. No destination. Just paper and pen and all the words I never got to say when he was still listening. Some letters are short. A few lines. Others spill into margins and bleed across 2, 3, 4 pages. Sometimes I talk about memories. The first time he swam without floaties. The look he gave me when I taught him how to whistle. The night he cried after his first heartbreak. And I sat on the floor with him until he fell asleep. Other times, I talk about nothing. The weather. The waves. What I had for dinner. What book I'm pretending to read. I don't reread them. I don't edit. I just fold them in half and slip them into a shoebox under the bed. The lid's getting harder to close. But I don't stop. I can't. It's the only way I know how to stay connected to someone who erased me. People think closure is a door you slam shut. But sometimes it's just a window you stare out of, hoping one day someone will come walking back up the path. I know he probably won't. But I write anyway. Not for him. For me. To remind myself that once, I was a father. And I showed up, even when I wasn't invited. None of them are mine. But I show up anyway. It wasn't planned. Just a local flyer in a coffee shop volunteers needed. Literacy program for teens. I hesitated. Then I called. Once a week turned into twice. Twice turned into whenever they needed a sub. Now I'm just there. Some kids come hungry. Some don't speak much. Some talk too much. Because silence scares them. And every one of them reminds me of him, and none of them do. One draws comics in the margins of his worksheets. One asks me about space every single session, convinced aliens have already made contact. One's too cool to care, but his eyes linger when I talk about the hero's journey. I never call them kiddo. That word belonged to someone else. But I show up, with pencils and extra snacks and a voice I didn't think I had anymore. They don't know who I used to be. They don't know how much of me is taped back together. They just know I'm there. And for some of them, that's enough. One of the girls asked me if I had kids. I said, used to. She didn't push, just nodded and offered me half a granola bar. The thing about showing up is it doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't rebuild the past, but it gives the hurt somewhere to go. These kids don't know what they're saving me from, but they are. One page at a time. One late afternoon where I feel useful. Some days I stay late, helping pack chairs or wipe down tables. I walk home with chalk on my hands and ink smudged on my sleeves. And for a moment, I forget the silence waiting in my inbox. I forget the blocked number. I forget the years I lost, trying to hold on to someone who was already gone. These kids don't carry my name, don't carry my blood, but they carry my effort. And sometimes, that's enough to keep breathing. Enough to remind me I still have something to give. Enough to make the next letter easier to write. I still dream about his laugh when he was 5. That sharp, wild sound that came from the belly. Honest, untamed. He used to throw his head back when he laughed, like the joy was too big for his little body to hold. We'd be in the kitchen mixing pancake batter or making faces with the fruit. He'd giggle at the dumbest things, my pretend monster voice, my off-key singing, the time I wore his toy dinosaur hat to the grocery store. He'd laugh until he couldn't breathe, until tears rolled, until I forgot everything else. That sound is still stored somewhere deep in me, buried under years of silence. I hear it in my sleep sometimes, just for a moment. Then I wake up and remember. That boy is gone. What's left is a stranger, one who looks like me if you squint, one who shares my last name but none of my stories. I see photos now posted by mutuals, tagged from a distance. Him at a party, him on a hiking trail, him in graduation robes I never got to straighten. He's always with someone else, always framed by people who finished the version of him I started. He looks taller. His smile's different now, like it's been trained, polished for the lens. I keep looking for traces, a tilt of the head, a shadow of who he was, but I don't find it. Not really. Not anymore. Sometimes I wonder if I'd recognize his voice. If he called and said, "Hey," would I know it was him? Or would I mistake him for a stranger selling something I don't need? That's the part no one prepares you for. That your child can outgrow you in ways that aren't natural. Not age, not distance, but detachment. And you'll still hold the memories like they matter, even when they don't. Even when the person you remember doesn't remember you back. That's what grief is. It's love with nowhere to go, and it sits with me, quietly, like a roommate I didn't ask for, still whispering his laugh into my ears when I forget to guard them. You built a life without me. I finally did too. There was a time I would have given anything for one more chance, one more talk, one more birthday, one more apology, even if I had to say it first. I don't feel that way anymore. Not because I stopped caring, but because I learned I didn't need the ending I thought I did. He left, piece by piece, moment by moment, and it broke something in me that I thought would never heal. But then, slowly, I realized I didn't have to stay broken. I could build something new. Not out of spite, not out of bitterness, but out of survival, out of peace, out of the simple desire to feel whole again. I filled the silence with music. I filled the walls with books. I made coffee without waiting for a second cup to pour. I sat in restaurants without checking my phone. I laughed again, really laughed. The kind of laugh that doesn't apologize. The kind of laugh that doesn't need to be shared to feel real. I found parts of myself I had forgotten. The curious part. The part that likes painting badly and walking nowhere in particular. The part that writes bad poetry and sings in the car and buys flowers for no reason. I stopped measuring my worth by how often someone called me Dad. I stopped chasing closure from someone who was never going to give it. And in doing that, I found something unexpected: gratitude. Not for the pain, but for the push. If he hadn't let go, I never would have. I'd still be standing in the same place, waiting for the door to reopen, begging the past to change. But it didn't. And that's okay. Because what came after turned out to be mine. Mine alone. And I made something beautiful from it. So thank you. Not sarcastically. Not secretly hoping you hear this and come running back. Just, thank you. You left. And it hurt. But it made space for me. For a version of myself that isn't tethered to loss. A version that chooses joy. A version that made it. But I won't chase him. If he calls, I'll pick up. Every time. Doesn't matter if it's midnight or years from now. I won't hesitate. I won't make him earn it. I won't pretend to be busy or let it go to voicemail just to prove a point. I'll answer. Because that's who I've always been. The door's still unlocked, the porch light's still on. But I won't chase him anymore. I used to. God, I used to run myself ragged trying to keep a connection alive. Texts, letters, birthday cards that were never opened, messages with no reply. Years of trying to stay visible in a life that no longer had space for me. I confused love with pursuit. Thought that if I just tried harder, loved louder, reached farther, I could bring him back. But love isn't something you drag behind you. It's something you offer. And once it's refused, you have to decide if you'll keep handing it over or if you'll finally let your arms rest. I've let them rest. Not because I've stopped loving him, but because I've started loving myself too. That took time and silence. And mornings where I didn't reach for my phone first thing. He knows where I am. He knows my number. If he ever needs me, really needs me, I'll be here. Not to rescue, not to fix, just to be a voice that says, I'm still here. But I won't chase his shadow. I won't keep offering pieces of myself just to be tolerated. I'm not a puzzle he has to solve. I'm not a test he needs to pass. I'm his father. I always was. And I always will be. But I don't need to prove it anymore. I've done the proving. I've done the waiting. Now I just live. Fully. Honestly. Quietly. And if one day his voice comes through the line cracked or calm or uncertain, I'll answer. But not from desperation. From strength. We can talk. But I won't rewrite the past. If he ever comes back, walks through my door, or calls, or even sends a message, I won't start by saying, I'm sorry. Not because I don't have regrets. I do. More than I can count. But because I've spent too long apologizing for things that weren't mine to carry. I won't pretend I didn't try. I won't act like I was perfect. But I also won't let him hand me the entire weight of the fallout. We both lived it. We both walked away from something. I'll meet him therein, that messy middle ground if he's willing. But I won't perform. I won't become smaller to make space for his version of the story. We can talk. Really talk. The kind that doesn't tiptoe or sugarcoat. The kind that risks discomfort in exchange for something real. But I won't let him rewrite me. Not after all this time. I was there. I remember what was said, what was done, what was ignored. I remember showing up. I remember not being chosen. And I remember surviving that. If he wants a relationship, he'll get me exactly as I am now. No edits, no mask. Just a man who has learned how to live with an open wound and still smile. I won't beg for connection. I won't grovel for forgiveness. I've already granted. I'll listen. I'll answer. I'll even cry. Maybe. But I won't trade truth for peace. Because the cost of silence is too high. And I've already paid it once. If he comes back into my life, he'll meet someone grounded. Someone with boundaries. Someone who knows his own worth. Not the man he left, but the one who rose from that absence and built something steady, something strong. I'll welcome him with open arms, but not folded hands. And if we talk, it won't be about blame. It'll be about truth, his, mine, the middle. But I won't rewrite it just to make him feel better. Not anymore. I loved him enough to let him hate me. That's not a sentence most people understand. But any parent who's been through it knows. Love isn't always soft. It isn't always rewarded. It doesn't always look like bedtime stories and graduation hugs. Sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it's rejected. Sometimes it's letting someone walk away because forcing them to stay would only twist the knife deeper. There was a time I would have begged. I did, actually. Not on my knees, but in the thousand small ways a person pleads. Showing up, asking to talk, remembering birthdays no one invited me to. Every effort was a whisper of, "Don't forget me," but he did. Or at least, he wanted to. And I had to let that happen. Not because I wanted to, but because love doesn't mean possession. It means space, even when that space becomes a void. I used to think being a good father meant being central, present, the loudest voice in the room. But it turns out, sometimes, it means becoming a quiet constant instead. A lighthouse he doesn't see until the storm returns. I still check in from a distance. Still save articles I think he'd like. Still keep his childhood drawings in a box that I open when the silence gets too loud. And I still remember that boy, the one with scraped knees and questions too big for bedtime. Every time I pass a toy aisle or hear a certain song or smell a certain shampoo, he's still in there somewhere, I think. But he's not mine. Not anymore. Not in the way he once was. He's his own person now. Angry. Grown. Maybe still figuring out how much of me he carries, whether he wants to or not. And I've made peace with that. My love doesn't vanish just because it isn't returned. It just changes shape, softens around the edges, stops demanding, starts waiting. And if what he needs is distance, silence, even blame, then I'll carry that. I'll hold it, quietly. Because love, real love, means letting go of control. And I loved him enough to let him hate me, if that's what he needed to grow. Sometimes, you find family in people who choose you. It started slow. A neighbor inviting me over for dinner when she noticed I hadn't turned on my porch light in a week. A coworker sliding a coffee across my desk with no words, just understanding. A student staying behind after class to ask how I'm really doing. None of them shared my DNA. None of them knew the boy I lost or the silence he left. But they showed up. Not out of obligation, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And that, I've learned, is what makes something sacred. Choice. Family isn't just about bloodlines and birthdays. It's about presence. It's about the people who remember your coffee order and ask if you're sleeping okay. The ones who don't flinch when the grief slips out sideways. The ones who sit with you through the hard parts, even when they don't know what to say. I've found those people. In the teacher who lends me novels she knows I'll never finish. In the kid who insists I take home the lopsided clay mug he made in art class. In the old man at the pier who nods at me every morning like we've known each other for years. None of them call me dad. But they remind me I'm still someone. Still needed. Still capable of giving and receiving love. The kind that doesn't come with conditions or ultimatums. Just small, steady gestures that rebuild something I thought was gone for good. I stopped waiting for one person to fill the space. Started letting it be filled with moments instead. A laugh. A shared silence. A hand on my shoulder when the words won't come. And in those moments, I feel it, that quiet kind of belonging that sneaks up on you. The kind you don't have to earn. The kind you just get to hold. Maybe he'll come back one day. Maybe he won't. But I'm no longer living in the maybe. I'm living in the now. And now is filled with people who chose me. Not because they had to, but because they saw me. And stayed. Is another day I become whole. There was a time I marked the calendar with circles, birthdays, milestones. Even random Tuesdays that felt like the kind of day he might call. Each one passed quietly. No message, no knock at the door. At first, each silent day felt like erosion, like I was being chipped away. But something strange happened in the absence. I stopped shrinking. I started rebuilding. Without meaning to, I became a person again. Not just a father in waiting. Not just a question mark in someone else's story. I became someone with morning routines and quiet joys. I began to cook for one and not feel lonely. I walked to the pier with no destination and let the sun warm my skin like it was trying to write me a new chapter. The grief didn't vanish, it never does, but it softened. Lost its edges. I stopped replaying the last things he said. Stopped practicing what I'd say if he returned. The imaginary reunions faded. They had to. Because you can't live inside an echo. Every day he stays away, I learn more about who I am without the title I clung to so tightly. I learn that love doesn't have to look like proximity. That letting go is its own kind of strength. I used to wonder if he missed me. Now I wonder if he's okay. And then I let it go. Not because I don't care, but because caring doesn't have to mean waiting. I light candles in the evening. I read again. I let myself laugh. Loudly. Freely. I've made peace with the silence. I no longer fight it. I sit inside it and make it a home. Because even if he never returns, I'm still here. Still alive. Still worthy. Still whole. I reclaimed myself. It took years to understand that pain isn't always loss, it can be transformation. I didn't lose him in one moment. I lost him slowly, like a tide pulling back. And I fought it, clawed at the shoreline, tried to hold on with everything I had. But in the fight, I lost myself, my sleep, my joy, my identity. I was a man standing on a burning bridge, waiting for someone who'd already walked away. Until one day, I stepped off, not out of defeat, but out of mercy, for myself. And when I did, something shifted. I realized I wasn't empty. I was spacious. I wasn't abandoned. I was available to my own life, to mornings that didn't begin with dread, to evenings that didn't end in aching, to a self I had long forgotten beneath the rubble of trying to be everything for someone who chose to forget me. I started talking to strangers. I started talking to myself, kindly. I stopped measuring time by what I missed and started counting what I made. A garden, a community, a sense of peace. I didn't lose a son, I lost a role, a label, an idea of how things were supposed to go. But I gained presence, freedom, myself. And when I look in the mirror now, I don't see failure. I see a man who stayed through heartbreak, through silence, through the slow unraveling of a dream. I stayed with myself, and that's the miracle. I'm no longer holding a door open for someone who won't knock. I'm holding space for the life I still have. And it's good. It's mine. It's enough. This story was brutal. But this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.